Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our work on the dissipation of glamour. This is an unusual day, and I'm kind of, broadcasting this image maybe a little bit better because I basically hope you can receive it. I would like to just talk with you and have a look at some of the implications of this particular day in which the sun has moved into Aquarius, the sign of the group, the sign of the New Age, the sign of the hierarchy, and the sign of democracy in a way, and also the sign of group process, whether that process is on a high level or whether the process is at the more or less dead level, involving, what's called in the South Pacific the tall poppy syndrome, where you standardize everybody and you don't allow them to really emerge with their gifts. That is always the danger with Aquarius. No sign is perfect, and people react to it according to the nature of their form. I've made just a few notes here because I don't plan that this shall be the usual kind of discussion webinar. I think we've all had tremendous discussion. I think it's time for some deep esoteric work. Obviously, it is clear that today has some world implications because we are dealing with the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States, and he will be in a position of tremendous power and global influence. It doesn't make any difference what side of the choice you may be on. There are many people in the esoteric community who abhor the turn of events that have occurred and the election of this particular individual, but others who are equally sincere and longtime students of the teaching believe that this represents an opportunity and is actually an improvement over the other alternative. So we cannot get into this back and forth about who is good and who is bad and so forth. We have to take a larger perspective, which I hope all of us will be able to maintain today. I think in about 12 hours, the inauguration takes place in the Eastern time zone of the United States. Excuse me. So I'm trusting that many of us, whatever our political persuasions, will be able to esoterically hover over that event as a group and invoke and hopefully evoke the best possible energies for 4 years or so, which will be very instructive to humanity. The Christ said, and I guess we do have the sword on the wall here in our temple of silence, I come to bring not peace but the sword. Now, some people have interpreted this as simply related to war, but the Tibetan inclines us to think that it is the sword of discrimination. Now, obviously, in many ways, humanity is not very well educated and knows very little of the true purpose of life and its mechanism of reincarnation and the great hierarchical structure of the universe and all that kind of thing. It is not understood, nor do we have a very good grasp of the best human values. I'm speaking universally. Obviously, there are some people who have an excellent grasp of human spiritual values and others who have no idea whatsoever. And the discrimination should, the sword of discrimination should, over the next few years, help us see what are the nature of better human values, what really works for humanity and what does not. We have almost a shocking comparison between the administration that has been in the United States for the last 8 years with its kind of second-ray bias. That's not to say the sixth ray is left out of it. You know, the soul ray of the United States is the second ray, and its personality ray the sixth ray. And Obama was a man with probably, if all is correct with the birth times and so forth, Aquarius rising, which is the soul sign of the United States. But there's quite a contrast now because a very strong sixth ray wave has brought the present administration into power. And there's a strong Gemini influence, which is the personality sign of the United States. And that even would have been the case if the other contender, Mrs. Clinton, had won the election. The chart that I use for her shows Gemini rising, and she's a Scorpio. So there was no way for any of us to escape the need to analyze with clarity, discriminatively, the turn of events which have happened in the United States and in the world. So may we all, from the fourth subplane of the mental plane, develop a keener discrimination between that which is of the personality and that which is of the soul. That is the key discrimination in the life of the disciple, and hopefully more and more of the masses of human beings who are becoming what the Tibetan calls the world disciple, develop this kind of discrimination. Our main issue here is between that which is personal and that which is suprapersonal or impersonal. Now, we're certainly not going to succeed entirely in the suprapersonal and the impersonal. This is something that one has to develop on the path of discipleship. But on a larger scale, these issues are outpictured with the two alternatives of nationalism and globalism. Now we have defenders on either side of this sort of equation. There seems to be a regression into defensive nationalism, and it is sweeping the world. A number of the federations which have come together, even the United States, but certainly in Europe, the European Union is threatened with the possibility of disintegration. And we do know that Master Rakusi, the Count de Saint-Germain, the Mahachohan now, is the great individual who is the regent of both the United States and of Europe. And we have this tendency towards fragmentation occurring. We have the Brexit, we have the recent rejection in Italy of a kind of program which was more supportive of the UN. We have in France, Marie Le Pen pulling ahead in the election, and she is a definite nationalist, who wants to withdraw, see France withdraw from the European Union. And this kind of fragmentation could continue. It's not in the interests of the Aquarian tendencies of hierarchy. It is more along the Leo line, everyone for oneself. But I want to emphasize something important, however, that nationalism is not all bad, because every country has its soul ray and its personality ray, has a soul sign of the zodiac and a personality sign of the zodiac, and these must not be somehow diluted and washed away in the standardization which can sometimes accompany Aquarius. and the globalistic tendencies. Every country does have to stand up on its own virtues and contribute those virtues to the international scene. And this is sometimes forgotten by globalists who seem to want to make everybody the same, and they're not. Just the way in any group people have their various soul ray and astrological virtues, so do the nations. And there must be sufficient emphasis upon those gifts and the cultivation of those gifts in order to contribute them to the growing international scene. So a premature globalism is a lot like the tall poppy syndrome. You know, you're all the same here, and don't try to stand out or emerge with your particular gifts. We'll just, you know, cut off the flower, cut off the head. So either way, there is danger. There needs to be a balance between an enlightened nationalism, which expresses the gifts, and the larger picture of the globalism. Now, you know, in one of the candidates, the president-elect, we do have the very strong Leo sign, and we have Gemini. So the question is, will there be a complete reversion to that which is opposite Aquarius, or will the gifts of the United States and maybe of other countries be allowed to emerge? You know, the question is, with any new administration or with anybody that comes into power, their astrology and their rays are going to be prominent. And do they tend to support, or are they supported by, that which should emerge from the energetic perspective in any country? Now, Aquarius is to emerge in the United States and really all over the world, which does not mean that the sign of brotherly love, Gemini, is necessarily to be put on the back burner entirely. There are many Geminian virtues, and as we go through these decanates of Aquarius, 720 degrees each, the first one being the Aquarius decanate, then the Gemini decanate, and then the Libra decanate, in which Venus and brotherly love will indeed emerge, and a greater sense of spiritual equality. All of those air signs are important. So we cannot take the Gemini that exists in the chart of the president-elect and also in Hillary Clinton's chart. We cannot take those as necessarily indications of something bad. We do need a new type of fraternal relationship. And then there's also the question of the rays. You know, obviously, in a businessman, the third ray is probably very prominent. The third ray and the first ray are both prominent, and a lot of the unpredictability of the fourth ray is there as well. Now, we know that the third ray star in the Big Dipper is out of alignment, and it's in relationship to a star, and people debate which one, within the Pleiades, which is also out of alignment. And the relationship of these two third-ray stars to our solar system is the influx of materialism into our solar system, and maybe more specifically our very material planet. So we have to see whether there will be a surge of materialism in the United States and all over the world consequently, or whether it will be possible to maintain soul values. Always a balance has to be recreated, and some people think we went too far during the last 8 years, and this is kind of a rebalancing of the picture. Obviously, you know, opinions are very, very heated on this whole thing, and I'm not interested in getting into the kind of polemics where the opposite sides of the Gemini personality of the United States are fighting it out with each other, each with their own powerful justification. Now, so, you know, people like ourselves, we are esoterically inclined, we are meditatively inclined, we work a lot on the inside, we don't necessarily have a whole lot of outer power, but it's important for us to support that which is of the soul and that which is not of the elemental nature. The elemental nature will make its demands. This is the personality, and there are many people in this country, America, who have felt left behind, who have felt that globalism has taken away their jobs and taken away their economic opportunity. And, you know, the old saying in politics, it's the economy, stupid, you know. It seems to work out that way, and the economy is a lot about maintaining the welfare of the physical vehicle and supportively the emotional and mental vehicle. So a lot of people, you know, in this election, and maybe in all elections, considering where humanity is right now, are voting their personality. They're voting the welfare of their personality. They're not necessarily voting the welfare of soul values, which are only slowly emerging in the masses of men. People like ourselves have to do everything we can to support soul values in the coming years, both in our immediate environment and in the general thoughts which we project. What is not going to work are great battles between the red and the blue and the left and the right, and, you know, people taking very strong partisan positions. It just degenerates into kind of warfare. DK said that the members of the new group of world servers would be those whose action was entirely constructive, and they would not descend into the usual kind of vilification and criticism which is so common in the political discourse. They would be building for the new age a more ideal structure of relationships. And I know, you know, it's very tempting to see abuses on either side with either candidate or with either groups. The second ray can have its abuses too, so can the sixth ray. The abuses are obvious, but if we descend into battles over the abuses instead of building for the new age in our mind and in our words, in our expression, then we're not doing what Master DK recommended. You know, we are heading towards globalism, but it has to be an enlightened, variegated globalism in which the virtues of the individual nations do emerge. Our work is subjective, and some of the most important parts of it are the triangles work subjectively, and the reappearance of the Christ work, and the work on the deglamorization of the human consciousness. Triangles somehow has to underlie all that we do. We're in a pattern of squares at the moment. We're a non-sacred planet, and this pattern of squares is simply not working. So this pattern of squares will be bisected into, esoterically bisected into the triangles. And as a result, the soul energy will begin to come through more powerfully. So this subjective work is something that we can do during these days which are questioned. Now, the other work, yeah, my wife is here worrying about whether I'm broadcasting. Yes, I'm broadcasting. Okay, she can make a nice picture, she says. I'm not sure about that, but this is where it is, dear. Maybe I just go on. Okay. Okay. Go ahead. Okay. Okay. All right. Anyway, the reappearance of the Christ work. Well, we know that the Tibetan told us that humanity will get itself into such a pickle that it will not be able to solve its problems alone, and that hierarchy will have to be called upon. So, you know, we're talking about the return of the great teacher and his hierarchy, and this is terribly important that we continue to propagate this idea in a most intelligent way. And then, of course, we're going to be meditating on glamour and on the deglamorization of the human consciousness. So I'll tell you what, if you would get the glamour meditation up on that. I'm getting a little help here from Tuija because the glamour meditation is on the other computer, which froze. So maybe she can find that for me. Otherwise, I'm going to have to wing it. So those particularly, now we also meditate on the souls of nations, and we try to draw forth the best from every nation. And of course, the crux of the problem is the financial one, and we want to use our resources wisely. So all of that we can do. Now, you know, today I'm here in Europe, and I somehow plan to be watching the inauguration if I possibly can. I know there are a lot of people that are, you know, boycotting it and refusing and planning to disrupt and all of that. But I think the wise thing is to try to understand who is who, and what are they doing, and what are the energies, and what do we need to do. So a sober assessment of all of the energies which are present in this inauguration, evaluating how people are interacting and trying to see what energies are coming into power and how subjectively we can create harmony and as much light as may be possible. Now, you know, what I think is coming up here is a very educational experience. Humanity is not yet informed about the consequences of their choices. They make choices which are based upon, the choices are based upon the desires of the personality. And these really do not lead constructively into the future. So we have to learn. The masses of people have to learn. The intelligentsia has to learn, and the spiritually inclined people of the world who have been through those two phases, they have to learn too how best to handle the situation. I'm sure that we will see the consequences of our choices when we move forward into these next 4 years. It's not always going to be pleasant, and I would say this regardless of which candidate had won this election. As I try to emphasize, globalization does have its downside if it's not handled properly, and certainly we know the downsides of nationalism. America, according to the Tibetan, is still an adolescent country, and its difficulties and its misbehavior is due to an adolescent attitude. I'm sure that with the kind of educational work that is going to be done in the next few years, America will move out of adolescence, and maybe the whole world will be wiser in the long run. Perhaps sadder, but wiser. Let us see. All during this, we as students of esotericism have to support the Shambhalic, the 4 freedoms of Shambhala. And so I will read what they are in just a second. Press the 4th one in from the left, and then the one to the left, and then go for glamour. And it's right here. There's a glamour thing in one of these. Tuija's trying to give me a hand here so that I have the meditation handy when I need it, because I've had to switch to a computer which does not have that meditation. So the 4 freedoms. What I do is I try to judge all candidates, all those in power, by the degree to which they uphold the four freedoms. Freedom of speech. This is severely challenged today by well-meaning people under the term of political correctness, and then there's also simply abusive language that is being used, and you wonder, should it be allowed to be used? There's the old statement that no one has the right to yell fire in an overcrowded theater. Well, you know, and that comes from the time of John Marshall earlier in our national history. But nevertheless, freedom of speech, though unpleasant for many, must be protected at all costs. So this is one of my touchstones, at least, as I try to look at what any administration will do. Then freedom of worship. This is severely challenged in the world today as people are being annihilated simply because they believe in a certain approach to what they consider to be divinity. It is sacrosanct, and it must not be overcome by fear of the other person's method of worship. Okay. Then also there is the freedom from want. We have economic disparity in the world, and the very rich are getting very much richer, and the poor are declining. And this it works against the possibility of the reappearance of the Christ, because some measure of economic sharing has to return if there is going to be, or would return, maybe it never existed. A greater measure of economic sharing must exist before the Christ can return. And this as well, freedom from fear, which Franklin Roosevelt basically told us was tied to disarmament and the impossibility of others creating aggression against other member states, other nations. And when we have this, this is a question of war and peace. So before the Christ can return, there must be a certain measure of peace which the hierarchy can determine. So the last two, freedom from want, freedom from fear, are directly related to the reappearance of the Christ. And then, of course, all of the churches and the various groups that orient man towards the divine, even our own, have to clean house. And those are the three things that will bring in the reappearance of the Christ. So we can see how important are the four freedoms. And when I look at what's going to happen during the next 4 years, I'm going to have this list of the four freedoms always in my mind and see when there is an encroachment against them. Any encroachment against these four freedoms is not moving in the direction of the divine plan. DK said that this is as much of Shambhala as present humanity can really understand, and so it's a very good touchstone. Well, anyway, our opportunity as esotericists, or students of esotericism more properly, is to educate humanity interiorly about the consequences of their choices and what true spiritual values really are. It's a time now to give up the values of the personality and their particular dominance and move towards higher values which will allow humanity to take the first initiation. The new group of world servers, of which we should be a part, have actions that are wholly constructive. Now, I know I can be just as passionate as anybody else in defending my particular point of view, and I'm sure we've all been on the opposite sides of various polemics at this time. But our work has to be, what DK says, wholly constructive. We have to invoke the positive energies, and perhaps today, if you are viewing the various ceremonies and the processes, you can do all you can to invoke the soul into the proceedings, so that hovering over that mass of people divided politically, and hovering over a country divided politically, and hovering over a world in which the personality and the soul are fighting it out in often subtle ways, we can bring in the positive energies. Bring in the positive energies. Now, I'll tell you what, friends. My plan for this morning's work is not the usual. It's not about discussion between us. Please forgive me for that. It is rather about us setting a tone to meditate on the banishing of hatred and separativeness. The problem is, you know, many people, they are marching, okay, they're stating their point of view. There's a big march of many, many women. I think it's a very positive thing. There are also those who plan to disrupt the whole situation. There's talk about drones flying in, dangerously so. There are those forces of disruption, which are not necessarily intelligent forces at all. And they, those forces of disruption are planning to do what they usually do, create chaos. But this is a transition of power in a very powerful country, and one that has global influence. So let us do what we can to bring the soul positivity and the presence of a clarity of perspective and even of harmony, if that is what is to be done. They can see everything that's on that screen, okay? And I'm going to now, without the advantage of having this meditation online, I'm going to, so don't really pay any attention to what's on the screen right now. Maybe, you know, a good image will come up that we'll see. The important thing is that we meditate together now using the glamour meditation, and we want to neutralize the glamour of hatred and of separativeness, which is so rife in the world at this time. So we will have, thinking of us, you know, I think the United States is pretty much out of the picture at the moment because it's extremely early there. But there are some 30-something of us here. And we will have some silence. We will have some silence. As we commune with each other in the state of soul and realize that we are one group. And some degree of strength must come in this silence, some degree of strength to us as we try to work from soul levels. Now, we're going to say a protective formula because this is serious work. And, you know, there are many forces released into the lower 18 subplanes now which are working against the divine plan. So we don't want to fall victim to those forces. The protective formula, we say this together, wherever you may be. I hope you remember it. I can't show it to you, unfortunately. So go along with me. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light, I work, and from that point, I never move. And we make the sign of the long-armed cross as we think about this. Maybe we'll do it one more time. Your forehead, center of your chest, your left eye, your right eye. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. So this protects us as we work in this powerful field of glamour. We focus the dual light of matter and of mind, our vitality and our mind, and we focus that upon the mental plane. We meditate to achieve some degree of soul contact, the light above the head, perhaps, however you visualize it. We recognize the existence of soul light. And now we fuse the two lesser lights on the mental plane with the soul light, which we also bring down to the lower mental plane. And so realize the light of vitality, the light of mind, and the light of the soul are all brought together. And now we're going to say together the following, and you can just think along with me if you don't have it in front of you. The light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So we're fusing the three lights together, and we sound the Om 3 times. So we have now the light with which we're going to work. And then the group will say the following, or think with me as I say it. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So the group searchlight is turned onto the astral plane. And these are the things we do using the group searchlight made of matter, mind, and the light of the soul. The triple light now as one. So we imagine that light out onto the astral plane. It's a triple light, and it's going to be an effective instrument in helping to dissipate these forces which divide people and prevent love and cooperation from expressing. And now we're going to invoke the spiritual will to strengthen the being from the sacrifice petals of the egoic lotus, from the jewel in the lotus itself and its surrounding synthesis petals, and from the plane of Atma, even from the monad, the spiritual will descends. And as we work upon the astral plane, we need this spiritual will. And we say, invoking the spiritual will, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. So our beam is infused with this power of spiritual will, spiritual willingness, willingness to serve the divine plan and as much of the divine purpose as possible. So our instrument is ready, and we're going to utter the words of power as we name the glamour and throw our triple searchlight upon it, dissipating the glamour. So we imagine these things happening. As we say these words of power, we imagine the visualization of the light penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakening and its dissipation. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of hatred and separativeness. Our being prevents even the appearance of this dual glamour. Then the power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour. No appearance, no quality, no life. And in the 5 minutes now of silence, we see this work proceeding with intensity of purpose as the work of dissipation occurs, and as the sun of truth and of spiritual light shines forth on the astral plane. So, 5 minutes of silence as we meditate. And there the image of the sun shining forth is there for you when the clouds are dissipated. We will now sound the Om 3 times, withdrawing our being from the astral plane, refocusing on the plane of mind, but aware that to some extent the glamour has been prevented from appearing. To some extent its quality no longer or affects less humanity, aware that life, vitality has been taken away from the support of this glamour, and that the sun of love, the sun of truth, the sun of harmony, the sun of clarity is shining forth on the astral plane to a greater extent. 3 times the Om. Friends, it's an important day. Humanity is facing inevitable tests before the first steps can really be taken for the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ. 2025 conclave will represent, in all probability, the setting in motion of the first stages of the real externalization. We're working towards that. It's going to be an inner battle, and we win with positive and constructive energies sent forth to recondition consciousness of humanity. So if you have a chance to tune in on the proceedings, remember this message of positivity and of the larger soul which envelops the affairs of human beings in a profound way, whether they seem to be going in a positive or negative direction. Eventually the soul will triumph, and we are on the side, if you can call it a side, we are on the side of the soul. Inclusively, we embrace the higher values and higher possibilities. So do your best today, and always think of the group as you are working internally on trying to bring the best possible energy out of the affairs of human beings as they make their own decisions and live by those decisions and learn by those decisions. Apologies again for the little technical problem, but maybe that can be reworked by our wonderful editors, and we'll see what can happen. All the best to all of you, and thank you for attending our work together. All the best. Lots of love. Take care.